It's Chelsea.
It's Nina.
And you're in the Critics' Kingdom.
Hello! So, this week we are doing Motocrossed.
Came out in 2001. Now, Motocrossed was a personal favorite.
Yes.
I loved this movie as a kid. Like, I thought I liked Double Team, and then, like, Motocross came out. You know? Or maybe the other way around, but it didn't matter. I loved the female sports films, but Motocross was my favorite of the female sport films, probably followed by Right on Track.
So. Yeah, so that was the thing that I realized that all this time I thought that Right on Track was Motocrossed until we started it. And then I was like, oh, these are two blonde teenagers. I got confused. And they kind of reminded me of Sweet Valley High, except one was a boy. But yeah, no, this was another one that I think I watched it when I must have seen it at least once, but it just melded with Right on Track for me for some strange reason. So
yeah, dude,
this was like my first like watch of it.
Yeah, like, I was such a total tomboy, and I was enamored with this film. Like I was really excited to watch it again because of how much I enjoyed it when I was little. But I guess with that, like, you know, I'll just sort of get straight into this recap. So this film, like, it starts off and we see, you know, who we'll come to learn is, you know, there are two twins, Andrew and Andrea, goes by Andy. And we see Andrew essentially training on his, you know, motocross bike in, like, the sort of training pit that his father has created around the house. And while Andrea is doing a cheerleading competition, which she wins. Her team wins. It's very cute. And essentially, like, we just get very early that Andrea is also talented on a motocross bike, just like her brother. And she used to be allowed to ride bikes with him, but as they've gotten older, her father, like, really put a pin in that and doesn't want her on a motorbike, doesn't want her on motorcycles at all, and essentially just doesn't want her racing in any capacity. But at the same time is really sort of pushing her brother to become, like, a great motocross racer, because their family is like a sponsor family. That's what the work that they do, and it's because the father used to race motocross when he was younger. So we have one of those, you know, like, dad living through one of his children and then sort of ignoring the rest, because there's also a little brother named Jason who's a mechanic, or he really wants to be a mechanic and he's very good at doing mechanical things, who his father also doesn't really encourage in that path. And doesn't really like him tinkering around with the bikes and stuff like that, and sees it sort of more of an annoyance instead of, you know, an asset. So he clearly has, like, he favors one child in a selfish and, like, misogynistic way. So that's the baseline, the setup for this, and mom lets it rock. So that's the setup for this situation. So essentially, Andrew's training for this, you know, big meet coming up, and the parents leave to, like, go into the city for a day, and Andrew and Andy decide to race, like, over chores. They race. Andrew actually ends up, like, getting hurt as they race, and he sort of blows out his knee. Because of which, like, Andrea feels really, really bad, because she's like, you know, it's my fault, and now the family's in, like, a precarious position because of something I did. Like, this is something I did. And her brother from Jump is kind of like, that's not true. Like, don't do that. We were both racing. Like, don't put that on yourself. He's a very supportive, good twin throughout, like, this whole film, which I deeply appreciate. But she sort of can't stop racking herself over the guilt. And her dad he leaves because now the family has to find a new rider, and they can't do, like, all of the American riders are taken, so they have to go so he's gone to Europe. That's what he does. He leaves and he goes to Europe. And while he's in Europe, they essentially find out that the series, that's what's called, it's not meat, the series has been moved up. So he's in Europe, and what I love about this film is that it all actually hinges on like old technology, and the fact that communication is not instant. Like, you can't text anybody, you can't just call somebody's cell phone. Like, he doesn't have a cell phone. He can only make calls from whatever hotel he's at. You know what I mean? So they have no way of letting him know that the series has been moved up. And it's a thing of like, if they miss the first race, they can't qualify for the rest of it. So, her mom is trying to get in contact with her dad, and it's like not working. And Andy sort of makes this decision, because she blames herself, that she's going to go out and she's going to race just to make sure that they can qualify. And then the next time we see her, her hair is gone. Her long, pretty blonde hair is no more, and she's full on like dressed as her brother, trying to get like new boots, because her boots are too big, or his boots.
His boots are too big. Yeah,
are too big for her feet. Trying to get like new boots at the store, at the bike shop. But like, it's at the same time that her family is coming in, sans her dad, to get new parts, and so we get like we just have a moment where like these two twins end up unwittingly terrorizing the poor shopkeep, and essentially they figure out, like, both of her brothers end up seeing her, and they're like, oh my god. And she's like, let me just do this for the family. And they're like, Dad's gonna kill you. And she's like, let me do this for the family. But because they're good brothers, like, all right, cool, bet, whatever, we got you, we'll cover for you. And it seems like everything's gonna work out, and she's packing up her bike to go in the morning. But her mom is not an idiot, and is like, comes downstairs and is like, what are you doing? Why are you about to get in the van with this shopkeep that you know can't see?
Literally has to have driving glass.
Like, you know he can't see.
And still can't see her with the driving glasses
on! Before dawn. Like, you must be crazy. Get your little behind back in that house. Fair, right? And she's like, no, it's not gonna happen. Like, it's just what it is, and we have to move on. And then, she kind of gets a little thing from her son. Like, Jason is one of those great those characters that I love. I'm sure that you've all realized by now, like, I have certain types of characters that I love. I love that this little boy, like, he's just sitting there and he's observant, and he's speaking the truth to the rest of his family all the time. And he's like, Mom, I don't know, like, like, why it seems a little messed up. Like, why can't Andy race? I don't get it. Like, from the mouths of babes. He's a very Emperor's New Clothes child. Of just like, I see through all this BS that you guys are pretending is real. So she essentially is like, why? Her mom goes to her and is like, why do you want to do this? Is it just because you feel guilty, or is it because you really think that, like, you can race, and because you really, really want to do this, something you want? And Andy sort of confirms for her that's the latter, and her mom is sort of wrestling with this idea of, allowing my daughter to be fully formed and be all she can be. So she's like, okay, cool, let's get there, right? We can just make it. So they pack up the van, they go, and she registers as Andy Carson. Like, that's what she registers as. Not Andrea, not Andrew, but Andy Carson. Everybody assumes that it's Andrew because, hair short, dressed up like him, wearing all his gear, and that's how that sort of goes through. So it's essentially we fall into a redoing of 12th Night. Like, that's what this film is. It's 12th Night on motocross cycles. I'll just go with that. Motocross bikes. Yeah. And she does her first race, and she ends up getting, like, stuck at the gate, and then gets, like, knocked off the track, and she finishes, but she finishes last, just dirty. Mm-hmm. And she's, like, not about it. She's so upset, and her mom is trying to, like, be there for her, but she's not really trying to hear her mom. And then this guy from another team, from Henderson Racing, comes over. His name is Dean. She's, like, immediately smitten. She thinks he's so cute. I thought he was fine as fuck when I was a child. I was like, I get it, Andy, girl. We love Dean. He sort of comes through and he, like, introduces himself. And it's kind of because, like, it seems to all of the other guys that, like, Andy Carson has this way with women, and all the women seem to be fawning over him, and it really is just because, like, they're getting their nails done at her mom's station, and she's like she can talk about nails and stuff, so the women are kind of like, who who's this man who knows about nails? And it's, a period of time where they're not gonna sort of assume any other reason except like, oh, this is a sensitive man situation, and I want him. So Dean kind of wants to make a friend with this Mac Daddy that he's seen from across the park. And he comes through and he sort of introduces himself and offers like words of wisdom about racing, and takes her on the tour of the Henderson trailer, which obviously gets him in trouble with the owner. And then he makes a deal of like, listen, I will train you to race because your instincts are good, you just don't know how to race.
Mm-hmm.
I'll train you to race if you help me out with the owner's daughter, because I'm like really about her. Her name's Farron. And Farron obviously doesn't give a crap about motocross, is like just really not about any of this, none of this dirt and grime. So, and she kind of wants to give up, but her mom is just like, I'm not gonna let you do that. She's like, you didn't even want me doing this to begin with. She's like, that's not the point. Like, I'm not gonna let you give up on your dreams the way that I gave up on my dreams, because I knew my parents would freak out about it and essentially stay in my role as a woman. So she takes Dean up on his offer, and they go riding through like true rugged terrain, and like that's essentially just going to be how she learns to train. And then she like figures out that Farron's actually not into Dean at all, but she's like, you know what, like, and she tells Dean, but Dean's like, I agreed to train you, I can't help, like, it doesn't matter what she did, like, I'm a good guy, I'm gonna help you out. But Henderson's starting to get suspicious, and they're just like, little things are starting to pop out. Now, she starts to do well. Like, she starts to do like pretty well. She places 7th, and then she finally wins 3rd, and it's like crazy. It's like she's a whole different rider. It's so good. But that's when her dad shows up, and he's pissed at both her and her mom. He's like, what the hell are y'all doing? So they bounce. And it turns out that he's hired this new rider from France named Renee, who like is available because he's a dirty rider, essentially. And everybody in the family is like, this dude is horrible, because he stays at the house and he's just like terrible to everybody. Everybody in the family is like, this dude is garbage, and their dad is so just sort of blinded by like not wanting his daughter to race that he refuses to acknowledge it. And and she does manage to get Farron and Dean together because she gives them in-sync tickets and, makes that work out. So at the next series, the whole family is at the series because, it's a racing family, but Renee is the one who's racing. And when he races, he, like, injures another rider. And he's, like, colluding with the Hendersons. And he sees that happening and sort of confronts him about it. And he's deeply rude to her to the point where he shoves her. And while this is happening, Andy's dad gets a dressing down from his wife Geneva, being like, listen to yourself talking about your own daughter, how she gets along with almost everyone. Like, you don't think that if this dude if she's constantly telling you about this dude, that maybe it's about him and not about her? Like, you should trust your own self with your kids and know who your kids are and like respect them and love them for how they are and let them be that. And he's like, okay, but then he sees Renee shove his daughter, and he's like, what the hell? Now, in my opinion, he actually doesn't react strongly enough. But he doesn't. That's a whole other aside. And he essentially is just like, all right, I've kind of been a dick, but I'm gonna let you race. And she's like, great. And it's a true Team Carson effort because there's been this whole thing with the bikes being switched out, and they're like, we don't have time to put the front end back in the new one. And Lil Jason is like, but I mean, I'm here though. Like, I've been waiting for this moment. Let's go. And it's, they get together. It's her mom is the one at the front lines with her because her dad's like, yo, y'all had a good thing going. Let's not mess it up. And she's the one who like gives her that, like, she gives her signs throughout the film. And the one at the last one is like, watch the last turn, because she's racing against Renee now, who's under the Henderson banner. And that's the last turn is where he injured the last rider, because he races dirty and like physically knocks them out. So she's telling her to watch it. She does watch it. She manages to play it so that she stops when he would have hit her, which causes him to go flying off course. And she wins the whole series. which means that in theory she's the winner of this big sponsorship by the host of the series. And when it's time for her to be interviewed for it, the Team Henderson, the runner of it, Mr. Henderson, he's like, she's not even really Andrew Carson, and Renee's like, she's a girl, like, and she takes off her helmet and admits that she's Andrea Carson. And at first it seems like everybody's about to be like, oh no, like, what's going to happen? But her mom is like, listen, I've been reading the whole rule book, and nowhere in here does it say anything about girls not being allowed to race. And she did not falsify anything. She registered as Andy Carson. Her name is Andrea Carson. She goes by Andy. Everything is actually, like, totally fine. And then the sort of owner of the big sponsorship company comes over, and she's a black woman. And, you know, at first it seems she's like, they're wondering if they're gonna honor the sponsorship, and she's like, am I gonna honor the sponsorship because of, you know, we have someone who showed up, impersonated her brother, like, and then outperformed every man here in a quote-unquote man's sport and did it all as a woman. How could we not sponsor her? That would be crazy. Like, and not only are we gonna sponsor her, we're giving the whole family a team contract. And so it's like things work out crazy double fold, and then lo and behold, at first Dean's really upset that she lied to him, but lo and behold, they end up being able to hire a 250 rider, and Dean is the one who shows up to, like, see if he can get the spot, and she's like, alright, but you gotta race me. And the last shot that we get is them, like, racing and coming over, you know, a jump over the dirt on their motocross bikes, yellow and green. Yellow, orange, and green, orange, white. And it's cute and it's sweet, and that is the film Motocross.
And we'll be right back with the review. So for the review of this one, I think one of the things you notice quite early on is how unsupportive the father is.
Yeah, that's
like,
kind of it's literally the catalyst of the
literally just generally unsupportive. And I think it goes back again to what we were talking about with somewhat with, like, Gotta Kick It Up, but the idea that, like, feminine sports, or quote unquote feminine sports, aren't taken nearly as seriously, and the people that do them aren't taken as seriously, because we even see in the beginning Andrea is a really great cheerleader. Yeah. Like, that's, like, her thing. And it's like we have this, like, we have this view that anything that's more masculine is seen as better. And that especially equates to sports. So it's just like this idea that she can't do a male sport because she's not a man, even though he taught her to do this sport, which is wild. But it's very much just like women in women's business, men in men's business.
Yeah.
And that's, like, his way of thinking.
No mixing here.
And don't mix the two. Do we think he was pro Title IX?
I mean, he has very sort of clear delineations for, like, the roles that his children play.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I don't know, I just remember sort of being younger, and I don't know, I think I gravitated to sports films, you know, because of the female sports films, because of the tomboyishness in me, and, like, this feeling of, like, I can do whatever. But yeah, I don't know, it's something that has never really made a lot of sense to me, and I think it's partly because, you know, I grew up in a house with 2 girls, and, you know, my father was surrounded by women, and so I was never, I don't know if it's because there weren't boys to really compete with in that way, for, like, my father's attention, like, in my household, because I do have, you know, older half brothers, but to compete with in my household for my father, and they're much older than me. But my dad never, you know, like, when my dad saw that I had, like, an inkling towards, like, that I liked, you know, I would watch, I remember being little and watching the Bulls with my parents, you know, like me, mom, and dad sit down and watch basketball.
Mm-hmm.
You know, mommy watches basketball too. And when I was younger, you know, none of these things ended up coming to fruition, but like my dad like loves track. He's a Jamaican man. Loves track. And you know, would love to sit down. Like I would go and watch track races with my dad, and he'd sit down and teach me about track and help him. Like Nina helped me keep the times, like write down all the times in like in the program. And when I was like, I want to learn to ride a bike, I want to rollerblade, like all these things, I was like, okay, great, we're gonna go to the store, and we're gonna get you rollerblades, we're gonna get you a bike, we're gonna, you know, or I want to do karate, okay, cool, we're gonna get you in karate. Like there was no sort of boxes being put on me and what I was allowed to be interested in or participate in. And all of that came from the outside. Like it was like the outside world was the one who were like, oh, you let Nina do this. And like all of my closest cousins in age were boys. And I loved to run around and be rough and tumble with boys. And I remember when I was younger, my mom getting a lot of crap for it. About like, you let Nina like run around with boys. And she's like, well, what am I going to do? The girl don't want to put a dress on. Like, like let her be. Essentially just let her be. Both my parents were like, don't talk to, and my dad was always very big about that. Like, don't talk to me about how we raise our child. Like, let my daughter be exactly who she is. I'm the one who told her if anybody hits her first, to deck them back in the face. Like, I taught her that. Leave her be. And so it was always interesting to me watching, like, fathers who don't do that with their daughters, because it was so outside of my realm of experience. And I never, like, I was always just mad at this father in this film. I was like, Andy, like, go live your life. Your dad sucks. Like, he sucks.
Just an actively horrible person.
He's just a trash man.
Just a horrible, like, misogynist.
And it's like, I know it doesn't have to be this way, because Andrew's great. Like, he's, you know, he's a regular brother. He's like, let my sister do what my sister wants to do. And Jason's like, I'm really just trying to be here and maybe be seen. That would be nice. But yeah, also, yeah, let my siblings do what they want to do. Like, I don't see what the problem is.
Yeah.
You know, it's really
so
just
arbitrary.
the dad in this.
Yeah.
And the mom. And his mom, and his wife.
She just comes around.
She enables him. She like, you know what I mean? She doesn't,
the
until
is
now.
Internalized.
Exactly. She doesn't say, you know, you should treat both of your kids the same. It takes this whole experience for her to be like, we had twins. You have a son and a daughter, and you should treat both of them with equal care and love. Like, your daughter isn't something that you need to, like, coddle and protect. Like, you have to, or like, not any more so than you need to coddle and protect. And
only slot her into, like, women's sports, you know? Like, again, I'm like, I also was like, I've never really understood that either. Like, I don't know if I was necessarily either or. I think I've always been a pretty, like, balanced child in the midst of whatever you consider masculine and whatever you consider feminine, or whatever's coded as that in our society. But, you know, because my parents put me in everything. I was also the only child, so, like, you know, all focus was on me from the moment I was born. But, you know, my dad always wanted a girl. Like, that's literally what he's, like, he always tells me. He's like, I wanted a girl, so here you are. So I was never going to, like, if you had wanted to do, you know, they put me in soccer, they put me in karate, they put me in my mom really wanted
baseball,
me to be in basketball. I did t-ball. Like, you know, it was the whole thing. They really wanted me to be a basketball person because, again, I'm lanky and tall passing.
Yeah, man.
And it just never, I had no interest. But it wasn't like I went to more feminine things either. Like, so it was just like this thing where I was just like, yeah, athletics is not my thing. But, you know, I also didn't get it either. Because I was like, if I had said that I wanted to be a basketball player or done something like intense bike riding, like, my parents probably would have just been like, okay, you know, like, this is weird, but we'll go with the child and what she wants to do.
As long as you're not getting hurt, like, I don't. And even if, as long as it's something you want, as long as you're working at it and you know you're careful.
Yeah.
Like, we understand it's athletics, like in athletics and any sort of contact situation, you're gonna get hurt at some point.
Yeah.
Like, as long as you're being careful about it and you're taking it seriously, like.
Right.
Go ahead.
It doesn't matter. And I also don't know if that's partially because, in my case, my mom was in a very male-dominated field in the Army, and, like, was higher, by the time, like, she retired, was a higher-ranking person than my dad ever got before he retired. So it's like, I don't also know if that's why, because my mom was very much a tomboy growing up. So she just didn't have those barriers. Like, those barriers would not extend to me because she didn't put them on herself, you know?
That's very real.
Because I think that's also a thing.
But this was like I sort of, and like I said, like, it's something that I recognized that the outside world did was sort of box girls in this way.
Yes.
And it's one of those early...
This was very much a thing.
Yeah, and it was one of those, and it's still a thing, and it's one of those early sort of engagements with society that I had on like a grand level, you know, in my lifetime. I think even sort of before racially, before I was racially engaged with society, I like understood this like girl things and boy things, which is like, you look at kids,
you pick it up very early.
And I like, by the time that I had a say, when I hit like 3-4, I was like, I don't want to wear the dress. I have one dress that I like. All the rest don't put near me. I'm not putting it on. Like, I want to run around. I don't want to play dress up. Like, that's not something I'm interested in. I just want to run around. But that was seen as inappropriate for me to do. Yeah. But I was just a lucky person because it wasn't coming from my parents, so I just would be a thing of like, well, if they tell the world to leave me alone, I could tell the world. Then you could do whatever. I can do whatever I want. Like, when the world is telling me the right thing, they let me know. But it was a thing, and you see it in like, and you just brought up soccer, so I'm even thinking about like, She's the Man is another 12th night, and it's interesting that they always do the 12th night with these stories of like girls who play sport, you know, this impersonation situation. But yeah, I guess it just. I do wonder if it's something that is more prevalent when you have male siblings. You know? Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have an answer to that because I really just don't have a metric for it, and I don't have any sort of comparable familial situations like that, or friendship, like, you know, any of my friends, like, I don't think that there's
I feel like either you would get this situation, or you literally get a situation where the girl's just like, I'm one of the guys, you know, like it just or
sometimes you get one where I know I've heard people say that, like, because their brothers were like, one of my friends, she talked about how, like, when she finally got her own room, because she used to bunk with her older brother, but when they moved to a new apartment, when she finally got her own room, she was like, it was pink walls.
Yeah. Or you go hyper feminine.
They wouldn't let me do. Like, he would not let me do anything pink in that room, and I was like, I want the whole thing to be pink and white, bright pink and white. So like but there is, I think it's a clashing of energies that happens sort of much more aggressively, or it's a supposed clashing of energies that happens a lot more aggressively when you have like a multi-gendered sibling household. Yeah. I was gonna say arrangements.
A household. But yeah, no, I do think that's probably true. Obviously, if you're like a girl that grew up and had a lot of brothers or something, let us know what that was like for you. Because I legitimately I'm not sure.
And then I do also find it interesting, like, two things, like. The first, that how like these sort of father-daughter bonding stories are so often told through sports metaphors. Yeah. And then on the other side, like, it just sort of occurred to me how like the 12th night setup is so often used for the stories of like quote unquote women empowerment, which makes me wonder like how empowering is it really? Because
that you have to dress up like a man.
Like, not even just to dress up as a man, but it's also there's always this real like this then element of the romance. You know what I mean? And at the end, you know what I mean? She learns to ride well because of the man that she gets to teach her. You know what I mean? Like, it's like it's just, there are questions to be asked, I think. Yeah. On that front of, you know, how independent do we actually let the girls end up being, versus how reliant, because, you know, even this, at the end of the day, her dad says stop and she stops. And I mean, in all fairness, you know, like, 15, like, what can you do? But she says stop, she stops. She doesn't get a chance to do what she's got to do until it's literally what the men around her do. Yeah. He sees a man shove her, and he's like, oh, she must have been right all along. he doesn't listen to her the first time.
Right.
She has to be allowed. She has to be allowed this access. And when she's not allowed the access, she literally has to disguise herself in order to get anything close.
Yeah.
And we take that as, like, you know, I think for the times, I understand why it's been used as something that is meant to say, like, women can do anything and meant to be a thing of empowerment. But I think even as we've sort of gone farther into those thoughts, I think we can see how it's still a problematic trope in the way in which, like, actually maybe it's not about anybody giving anyone permission, like, or, you know, just, like, literally just get out of people's way. Like, actually, no woman needs your permission to do anything.
No.
She really doesn't. Like, and if she wants to play baseball, like, she won't play baseball. Like, you can't.
Yeah. You can't really do anything.
Yeah.
No, and I think it's also one that we've seen so many times, because you even think about, like, the story of Mulan. It's like the same thing, and granted that took place centuries ago, the original, like, Fa Mulan tale, but it is very much like that was a trope that we're very used to, where it's like the girl has to go through all of this stuff and become a man in order to be taken seriously, in order to fight for her family. Like, it's like, in order to do what is necessary for the whole family, she has to become a man. And it's like, that is a little, like, why? You know, like, it's like, does that always have to happen in order for you to, like, protect your family? And it's like, it's because men are coded as, you know, they're supposed to be head of household and all of that. And I do think it, in this case, in a lot of, like, sports movies cases, it gets into, I think, the idea of the feminine and the masculine that I was bringing up earlier, what we code as that, and also how it's encouraged for girls. You're encouraged to act more like boys, but the same thing is not encouraged for boys.
Yeah.
Like, it's an immediate, like, we don't have an equivalent for tomboy for boys. And if you do, it's not a good, like, it's a slur. Like, there's no positive association with a boy that acts a little bit more what is coded as feminine.
Yeah.
So I think
metrosexual is like
that's the closest,
and it's not
a good.
It's not a good one. It doesn't. It's dumb. And
I also think we just given up on it as a society, because we realize that it doesn't mean anything.
It really doesn't mean anything.
It's like, oh, you just like to keep yourself groomed, which is like a basic hygiene.
Exactly.
It should not be celebrated in any way, shape, or form. But, like, you know, it is one of those things where you just start thinking about it, and it's like, we actively celebrate girls that embody masculine things.
Yeah.
Except when they become the top of their career, aka Caster Semenya and Serena Williams. Then it's not.
Because then you're getting in the way of the man.
Right. But it's like, but if you're just a girl who, like, enjoys, like, football and basketball and, like, all of that, like, you're cool. And you're seen as, like, one of the good girls, you know, or, like, whatever. You're one of the guys.
In Gone Girl, they talk about that.
Right. Yeah, that's the whole cool girl speech. You guys all know it, you know. Because, yeah, people are obsessed with it.
They really are.
But, you know, like, it's you get back into that, and it's just like, we really demonize anything that's associated with femininity.
Yeah.
And we don't do the same with masculinity.
Deeply champion the masculine.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what happens in a patriarchal society.
Right.
It's because you need to psychologically get everybody on the same side in order to be ruled. Like, that's how that works. And that's why her mom operates the way that her mom operates.
Right. Because her mom upholding it is also something that is normal. Like I think people like to pretend that secretly the mom is, like, this, like, super feminist, and, like, you know, like, that's what we would like to think. And it's like, no, if she's been living with this man all these years, had these kids, like, her mom is upholding the misogyny as well. Yeah. That's very much, because it's like, again, you live in a patriarchal society, women also take in the misogyny.
Yeah.
You have to actively
everyone
unlearn
has
it.
to everyone
You
sort
literally
of
have to actively unlearn it.
Yeah. And it's just so dumb. It's such a because, like, I don't think, like, when you step back and you look at it from, like, a just pure logic situation, you're like, how does sort of immobilizing half of your population serve you? And this is true of all things, of like racism, of like how does immobilizing a significant portion of the population aid you? Unless you know who it aids? Dictators.
Yeah.
Like
authoritarian regimes.
Tyrants.
Autocrats.
That's who it aids. So, I'm not calling the kettle black, but mighty similar in color is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
The structures seem very, very similar. And it's just, and I think that that's why, like, it's a weird thing to watch these now, because I did love it so much when I was little, and I think I did love it because it's, for me, reading it as a kid, it was, this is the only place in, and I grew up in, like, a very sort of West Indian immigrant neighborhood, and, like, the West Indies, for all of the good there, like, it is a very sort of conservative place. They'll never say, you know what I mean, but it is, like, in their values, because it's rooted in religions and things like that. Like, there are a lot of it's well known, like, the homophobia of Jamaica.
Yeah.
It's like, and how deeply ingrained that is in, like, the psyche
Everything.
of that country.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
People escape from there. People claim refugee status elsewhere here because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are just certain, like, when it comes to those types of values and sort of like the specified gender roles, those are very much, even if they differ a little bit from, like, what's happening in America, they're adhered to. And I sort of grew up in that bubble. And I think I responded so well to these types of movies as a child because these were giving me these were my first entrances to realms where it's like the idea that it's actually fine that you're like that. It's fine that you like to do quote unquote boys things.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. And that's a good thing. It was like I had one cousin who always used to say, I was a tomboy too. And then, you know what I mean? Like, and then these movies. But looking at it now, so I completely understand why I loved it the way I did as a kid, and it still has a like rewatching it was so like it has a very special place in my heart, and I think it always will. But rewatching it now, it's like I see how, like, even in that though, like, we still have to unpack this, and we still have a lot of work to do to get there. Like, it's not gonna be a quick, easy solve. It's not going to be a solve that it's probably not going to happen in my generation, in our generation. You know what I mean? Like, my kids are going to still be fighting that fight, and like, I hope that they can get far, like, along in it. But like with our other sort of big, great institutional problems, it's going to take the same way that it took centuries to create it. It's going to take centuries of real, genuine, engaged work to undo it.
Yeah. I mean, and we are I am happy that there has been minor progress, like, even the introduction or the more wider knowledge of, like, using they and them for non-binary people, and just, like, changing how we even interact with gender and gender roles now is like there's a more focus on it now. Like, people are just very aware in a way that even like 5-6 years ago there was no awareness, about a lot of things, and saying, like, they're female identifying or male identifying, and, like, giving that also the thing that it needs, like, giving that the space that it needs. So I am happy that that's happening, but there is also still so much more that we need to, like, eradicate to actually get.
That's the word.
That's literally what it is. We have to eradicate, like, these, like, backward ass ideologies, like, it's just like the way that somebody identifies, the way that somebody loves other people has nothing to do with you. This is also that's all
the activities that they enjoy
literally has nothing to do with you, which has always been, like, my biggest thing with, and why I don't understand, like, blatant, like, transphobia and homophobia, just the phobias in general with that, because I'm just like, but what they do does not affect you. And
Well, the worry, Chelsea, but the worry is that it affects society.
It's society and the
and
babies.
all of our values are going out the window, Chelsea. Can't you see?
All the babies, the homophobic agenda,
Can't
the
you
transphobic agenda, and I'm like
marriage is a sacred institution that really is a legal piece of paper that binds you to
Literally.
another human.
Oh
For
my-
years has been for almost all of human existence has been contractual situation.
It is.
Of it makes more sense for us to share this shack than wander through the savannah separately.
Yes. And also, like, the cis
ruining
heteronormative agenda hasn't existed all these years. Like,
It really hasn't either.
I'm like, if anybody's agenda is playing, it's yours. Like, it's never been the homophobic or the transphobic agenda. The reason that there are more people is because now some people feel a level of comfort coming out. That's
Yeah.
literally what it is. And we would just be so much better as a society if we did not have this patriarchal overlord, but then B, if like you just let people love who they love and identify how they want to identify. Like, could you just imagine how we would be as a society if people could just be who they are with like no qualms in that regard?
And I think it goes sort of even like in a deeper way. Like I just remember I have a friend who said a few times how like this society is like anti-life.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it's anti-life. It's anti like things existing in like a full living form. And I don't think she's wrong about that at all. In fact, it's something that I've carried with me, and I like move through my interactions with my society with that always in the back of my mind. And I think that this whole idea of like life being deeply tied to love. That love is sort of a fundamental part of life as we understand it, life on a conscious plane. And so just like this sort of a deeper thing of just like let people love.
Mm-hmm.
Let people love. Let them love who they love. Let them love what they love. Allow them the space to do that.
Right.
Because that's what it comes down to, is that, and that's what creates the deep sort of problems, is that you tell people that what they love is wrong.
Right.
And with very few exceptions, genocide.
Yeah.
Pedophilia.
They're not part of the LGBTQ plus thing.
Like those have nothing to do
do not put pedophiles on LGBTQ plus anything. Like they're not associated. Stop that.
It's very fucked up. It's
Stop that.
Deeply fucked up.
Literally
stop
stop
doing
that.
It's not okay. It's really not okay. It's not okay.
It's not it's not okay.
So
it's not a
up.
thing.
It's so
Stop associating those two things. Don't conflate them.
Exactly.
They're not the same thing.
They're really not the same.
We have come to a point in civilization where we know that pedophilia is actively wrong. Like,
and we all, you know what I mean? And it's like, so outside of very sort of specific things, it tends to be, and I think it's also just a simple principle. If it's not directly affecting, or if it's not directly harming you, or the wording gets complicated, but like, we have to reevaluate what we think harm is. Harm is dumping shit in the water so that it runs brown and you can't bathe with it, right? Harm is not the two people down the street who happen to be the same, who identify as the same gender or are the same sex, choosing to get married and start a family. And your kid witnessing that.
Right. Like,
your kid can't be turned anything. It's impossible. That's not how it works.
That's not how it works. Because the thing is, this is the other thing with the whole agenda situation, is I was like, if there was a whole agenda, we've had cis heteronormative media for the entire time, basically, that like media has existed. So everybody would be cis het if that was true.
Yeah, exactly. It's
like then nobody would be non-cis het because that's all they see.
Exactly, but
like what? It just doesn't make any sense.
It never tracks. Listen, none of these things ever make sense.
Yes,
but that's why you have to create the propaganda to brainwash and indoctrinate.
Right.
As early as you physically can.
Right.
But yeah, it's just like we just gotta do better. It really just comes down to that. We gotta do better.
So much
and
better.
we've started the process, and that's fantastic. But we've started.
We moved an inch. we have miles. Multiple miles. We have a marathon to run. We moved an inch.
And just to this is not the time to throw in the hat. So it's like, I love this movie. I'll always love this movie. I love 12th Night, I love the play. I love like these stories, and I'm thankful for Motocrossed for being a part of my childhood. I'm glad that I had it. And it's still, it's a fun rewatch, but this is nowhere near what doing well looks like.
No.
It's nowhere near it, and we've got to do better. We got to get there. I believe we can. I believe enough in humanity. Like, I know sometimes I might sound very pessimistic on my faith in humanity on this podcast, but I am fundamentally more of an optimist than I'm just a realist, but I am fundamentally an optimist, and I do think that humanity is very capable. I think if we are capable, I look around and I see how capable we are of doing so many wondrous things, which means that we are equally capable of creating a wondrous society when it comes to how we relate to each other. We just have to be willing to do it.
Right.
And put in the work to get there. And make that a priority.
Yeah. You just stop arbitrary gender roles. They're so arbitrary. They don't make any type of sense. I also have very mixed feelings about people bringing them up to people when they're not realizing that they exist. I don't know. Like, I just think about the time when I was in college and I was doing like weighted squats this one time, and this guy that I was cool with like came up to me afterward and was like, "Oh, like, do you ever feel weird doing those?" And I was like, "No, why would I feel weird doing weighted? Like, whatever, I'm just using my the bar weight, whatever." And he's like, "Oh, I've just heard from like a lot of girls in some of my other classes that like they feel weird because like it's like a guy thing to do." And I had never coded it as that. Like in my entire life that had never been.
You heard from how many other girls said that?
So the thing is, I'm like, I don't think you're wrong. I do think that is definitely like, something that I could totally see women picking up on.
How did this come up?
But why did you come up to me and tell me that you've heard this? And because I'm like, I didn't code it as that until you said it. I didn't even know. Like, that wasn't even a thing that I should not be, or not that I shouldn't be doing, but something that wasn't coded as typically female to do. And I don't, like, it's so in that, I'm just like, also don't randomly put random things on people either.
Yeah, I don't,
Like, as soon as I said no, he should have just been like, "Oh, okay," and then just moved on. Like, why did that then become, well, let me tell you about this oppression that some other people feel when they have this. It's kind of like imposter syndrome. Some people don't realize it's a thing until you tell them that it's a thing.
Yeah. They really don't. And that's why that's why there are kids who, like, kids are like that too.
Yeah.
It's like they don't, you literally have to tell them that it's not okay for them to do something.
Right.
For them to get that place.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, sometimes, like, don't, which is why, like, for all of, because, in my West Indian familial circles, the whole, like, genderless raising doesn't get a great rap.
Mm-hmm.
But personally, I think that it's like, it's one of those things where I'm like, I actually think it fairly tracks. Like, this idea of, like, let your kid just let them figure out what they like.
Yeah. And go from there.
Like, not putting, like, the idea of putting my child in only certain color clothes is so strange to me. Like, why would I do that?
It's also, again, arbitrary. So arbitrary.
What?
Pink was a boy's color, and then they suddenly made it a girl's color. Like,
there was a period of time where everybody just wore a little white lace.
Yeah.
Like, that was it.
Yeah. Just the right.
They all look the same. You don't know what that baby is when you look at it. It's just a baby. That's the only signifier that you need.
Yes. Yes.
Doesn't matter. Anything else is just a baby.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't understand. Like, why did we stop that? What was the problem? Consumers.
Yes, consumer culture. That's why we have gender reveals. Anyways. We don't need to get started on that, but they're stupid. Because it just truly doesn't matter. It's a sex reveal also, but
yeah,
not a gender. Anyway,
they really do call it a gender reveal, and every time it's like that's incorrect.
It's actively incorrect.
That's not sex. Is what's the?
Can't we just like talk about this at the baby shower? Like, can't somebody just be like, "Hey, girl, you gonna find out the sex of the baby?" And you either be like, "Yeah, we're having a girl or a boy or whatever,"
or we don't. Or it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah,
and
or
up
you could just be like, "I don't care."
It was impossible to know.
Right, and you're just like, "I don't care."
Yeah,
it's whatever. Just get me like anything of any color. I'll use it.
Yeah, it's like the idea, like, and I can understand, like, you like just to bring it back to the film, like, understand. This whole thing where she's like, it's like all of a sudden at 13 you told her that she couldn't ride.
It doesn't make any sense.
She couldn't ride bikes anymore. Like, what kind of nonsense? I would be upset too. I'd be like, well,
why?
You've been letting me and the boy run around this whole time, which makes sense because we're twins,
right?
Like, we're gonna share interests. We're gonna and like the idea of like because one of us was born with one sex and the other was born with another thing. Like, do you understand that we still shared a womb?
Yeah. It's like in that puberty thing. It's always like it'll be sometimes okay until the girl hits puberty, and then at that moment it's suddenly like no.
And that has nothing to do with girls and women. That has to do with men being weak and disgusting
and not knowing and not wanting to know more about periods and any of that.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Like it has nothing. It's really not about it's men. It's weak men.
It's weak men.
Not all men are weak, but a lot of them are, and especially all of the ones who created and perpetuate the patriarchy. They're weak, and that's why they need indoctrination to keep people from rising them up. That's why they need indoctrination and arms to keep people from rising.
I just love it when they get mad at the patriarchy that was created by their forefathers. That's always my favorite thing. It's like when men ever get mad about like women preferring taller men, and I'm like, this is
you did that.
This is because you guys created a system.
You did that.
Where women were supposed to be smaller and dainty.
Well, so there's a bit of natural dimorphism, but it varies. It's not that bad.
It wouldn't be to the level that we're at now without you guys literally wanting women to be smaller and daintier than you and wanting to, be the opposite.
Keep them inside. They're all real light.
Right.
Got it's no like, muscle
so
mass
you've
that
created
was built.
something and now it's
like
we still use it and you're mad. Like it's what?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so I think
Andrew is not a weak man.
No. We love Andrew.
But her father is a weak man.
Yes. We love Andrew. We love Jason's gonna not be a weak man either.
No. Jason's gonna be fantastic.
He's gonna be great.
Great. I'm so excited. This is great. He's gonna be like a fantastic little mechanical engineer. I'm so excited for him to grow.
For his path
and be happy
in life. So, would you show this to the babies?
Yeah. I mean, I don't. Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. I think it's a strong probably. It's not like it has to happen. It would probably be higher on the list still, I think, because of my relationship to it.
Yeah.
Especially if I end up with like sports babies,
Yeah.
But if I end up with non-sports babies, maybe not. Maybe I'll be like, this will be a waste of their time. Like they're not gonna care. But yeah, it's a film that I can see myself rewatching in 2 years.
Yeah.
Because it's on one day, and I'm like, why not?
Sure.
So, because I still enjoy it, but like I said, it's a film of its time, and I would really like it to not have to be a concept that has to continue to exist.
Yeah.
Just one of those.
No, I think I would actually, I wouldn't discourage them from watching it, but I don't think I'd put it on personally.
Yeah.
I think She's the Man's a better version, or a more fun version of this, and where you also don't have the, like, misogynistic father.
Yeah.
So I think I would rather them watch that when they get, like, 11, versus this one personally.
No, I get that. I have, like I said, my connection to it is very personal.
You have more of an affinity towards it. Like I said, I didn't remember it. I truly was just
us
like,
figuring out that you were thinking
children?
About Ride on Track was great.
Yes. I was like, doesn't it have the girl from Seventh Heaven?
Like,
Isn't she a redhead?
No. And what's her name? Brie Larson.
Brie Larson. Like I was just
no. That's they're sisters, and no, that's a whole other film.
I was so confused.
Isn't she a redhead? No.
I was so confused.
And Brie Larson is the little redhead. I mean, her is kind of auburnish with the little ones.
Yeah, it's like I just knew there was brown reddish hair involved. But it wasn't this movie. So yeah, that's how I would personally view this one.
Yeah, and yeah, so I guess with that, you guys rewatch if you like.
Yeah.
Rewatch if you like. If you were like me and you
If you had an affinity towards it, sure, rewatch it. I mean, if you didn't, I don't know if I'd bother.
Chelsea,
I don't think I would. I personally would not tell you to bother.
Yeah.
I would tell you not to bother.
Dean's still cute, though.
Yeah. He was like a thing.
He was a thing.
Dang.
And with that, we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Critics Kingdom. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify and SoundCloud so you can stay up to date, as well as interacting and letting us know what you guys think on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Critics Kingdom and on Instagram at The Critics Kingdom. We're excited to talk to you again next week.